Hey guys, today we have a special guest here. So Robin here, you may remember him from his last video where we broke down how he was doing over $500,000 a month in revenue for his clients with his YouTube ad agency. So Robin actually flew over to Warsaw to come hang out, to talk YouTube ads, and he's actually taken his results to the next level. I think you're pretty much almost at a $5 million with YouTube ads for your clients at this point.
Yeah, past 5 million like 24 days ago now, something like that, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. So basically, Robin, a year ago, 2 years ago, you were just doing Facebook ads, right?
Yes.
And now you switched over to YouTube ads. It's really allowed you to scale your agency. And you're mostly focused in the Netherlands market, or?
Yes, mainly Netherlands and a few international clients, yeah.
Cool. That's interesting. So I want to ask you, because in the last interview, you went pretty deep into YouTube ads optimization tactics and strategies, and that was around 4 or 5 months ago. What has changed since then for you? Is there something you're doing differently with your clients right now, or?
Yeah, so if I have to think back, it's like two things. I've started implementing high ROAS for pretty much every client because I only see it getting worse, the tracking problem. So I just started implementing that, and that already improves like the results by 20 to 30% for most of my clients. So really high ROAS and really being on point with the tracking and even double tracking stuff in the CRM system. That's the first thing. And the next thing is I start going next level with the creative, because people start running YouTube ads nowadays. It's still like, not that saturated, but to really be like the number one in your market, it's really important to focus on the creative part. So I started doing way more stuff in the video, like editing, zooming in, zooming out. That's something we talked about that I want to still improve, but like arrows to point at it, some more engagement with text in it, some B-roll, stuff like that. So that's like the two things that changed since the last time we talked, yeah.
Cool, and with the editing, have you tried out adding in background music or sound effects as well?
Not sound effects, not yet, but the background music we started doing for a couple of clients, yeah.
And do you find that right now in the Dutch market that there's still a decent amount of competition, or is it relatively low competition?
Yeah, the competition is quite low. It depends, of course, on the niche, right? If it's about how to make money online, there's more competition. But there are certain markets, like for example, teaching Spanish or teaching like breathing exercises for the Wim Hof method, stuff like that. If you do it in Dutch, there's like zero competition. So I have a meditation guy, he's just teaching meditation and shamanism, and he's really killing it. Like super high click-through rates, a lot of leads per month, and yeah, nobody is on YouTube yet from the like spiritual realm. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, I've noticed that in the US market. So with that, what do you see as the big differences between American marketers and Dutch marketers? Do you feel like American marketers are more advanced or less advanced, or how does that work?
Yeah, I don't know about advanced. I think, yeah, for sure they are a bit more advanced just with the tracking stuff, because you guys always have the newest software, and a lot of like local markets also, if I look at German or the French markets, they stay behind a little bit. They adapt, for example, later, they start using high ROAS later. And the other thing, that's actually what we talked about before, is that in a local market, if you're the first, you can just come up with like, hey, the 5 simple steps to do this or solve this problem. But in the more competitive markets, internationally, that totally doesn't work. And in the Netherlands, you can get away with that in some markets. So I think just like the whole messaging thing is on another level in the USA. Like it's way more niche down, it's way more specific, way more unique mechanisms. That's something, for example, for my day trading clients that I'm really working on also in the Dutch market, but they are like, yeah, in the make money online space. So there the competition is the hardest. But so I would say that it is all way more basic still in local markets, depending on the niche, of course.
It's basically, hey, I'm the first person in this market, I'm selling this, and you should buy it.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the US market, it's like this, basically every product has this unique mechanism, and your unique mechanism has to be more compelling and interesting. And so that's definitely something that I've noticed in the internet marketing niche, where niches can get saturated pretty fast, and you have to be a good marketer. It's not impossible. It's very doable. I know so many people making hundreds of thousands or millions a month. A lot of our clients are doing exceptionally well right now, but it does require work, right? Like you have to kind of be a marketer essentially to be able to sell online. While in some of these other markets, like I sold in Brazil. So I sold an info product in Brazil for a year or so, and we did very well during that year. And that the reason for that is just because of the fact that really there was nobody else running automated webinars. And so we were able to scale fast. We were able to get to $7,000 a day in spend. And we did pretty well until we eventually shut the project down when copycats started appearing. It was more of a get in, take advantage of a gap in the market. And then we eventually decided, okay, the US market's actually a lot more sustainable because there's more money in it, right?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the copycats. I'm still running some Facebook ads, and sometimes with my bigger clients, I literally publish an ad, and within a week in my own newsfeed, I'm like seeing that ad run by someone else. I'm like, serious? At least try to change my ad a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's also in international markets, I guess, an issue, but locally you really see it. Yeah.
So what are the tactics and strategies you'll be using in 2021 and 2022 to scale your clients with YouTube ads?
Yeah, so we already talked about that. I started doing more YouTube advertising and pretty much went there, and I still think that's a huge opportunity. So what I'm really doing is looking for clients that don't run YouTube ads or just run YouTube ads really poorly. And the same with other forms of advertising. There are some forms that people don't really think about, and you just mention them, and then that's sometimes enough to get them on a sales call. And then sometimes you can sell them on YouTube, because like people don't always want to record videos 24/7 or whatever. But if you get them on a call and you can actually explain them the process, they're like, hey, that's something that could work for me. So I'm just using gaps in their advertising strategy to get them on a call and then sell whatever they need or what is missing, right? That's one thing. And also something I've been doing way more is revenue share deals. So I'm just charging a part of the profit most of the time. Sometimes, if they already make like 100K a month, it's like, okay, above 100K, 10% or something like that. And that makes that I can get way more per client, right? And then what I also sometimes do is I go a bit deeper in the funnel and help a little bit out with the funnel. So that's also an extra service I sometimes offer to build that out. So like that, you get way more money from one client. And also the results are sustainable and they will stay with you, because if you always improve something every month, a little thing in the funnel, a little new ad technique or like an ad angle, then it will keep working, right? And it's not like what you said in the Brazil market, everybody comes in and then you need to start really coming up with unique stuff. So I try to do that anytime, just always every month, at least test something new funnel-wise and ad-wise. So that's pretty much how I am planning on scaling.
Yeah, to be honest, with the Brazil info product, it was an interesting experience because we made a good amount of profit on it and it was lucrative, but we just came to a realization that, hey, at a certain point, it's getting to be a distraction where it gave us cash flow. It was an easy opportunity, made some money, we learned a lot, but then eventually came back to, hey, if we just focus on our own offer, our own YouTube ads training program, our own agency, we're gonna make a lot more money versus trying to get distracted with side projects. So that was kind of the reason why we stopped doing the Brazil offer, even though it worked well. And that was pretty interesting. So, and you're just focused on the agency for now and scaling that up.
Yeah, I mean, I started one little side project where we're setting up a more business in the weight loss niche, but that will still take some time, right? Yeah, that's also what I realized, and that's the thing I forgot to mention about scaling, is that I'm looking to expand more internationally. Because what you said, at some point competition will come in, and then the rat race, to call it a bit negative, starts, where you need to be innovating, you have to do creative stuff. And if you do that in an international market, the scale is 10 times, 100 times bigger. So it's worth it to be being super creative, researching your competitors, putting in all that time. But if you do it in a local market, there's just a certain cap, right? So then I started looking, okay, if I do this internationally, almost with the same skills, you can grow way further and you can help your clients achieve even more revenue. So that's another thing I forgot to mention. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that the skills you learn, let's say running an international market, they'll help your Dutch clients?
Yeah, for sure. I think actually, it depends a little bit, because if you look at international market, you can really go specific with keywords and groups. But if you do that in a local market, it's sometimes already so small that per definition, the cost is a bit high because it's too specific. So I guess in local markets, I try to make a more general, broad messaging work so that you can actually reach enough people. And in the international markets, you only start doing that when you start scaling, right? So at the beginning, most of the time you start a bit more specific and you have that space because there's so many million people. But if you do that in the Netherlands, you put an ad on and it works for 2 weeks, right? So in that way, I think that international, the technical part is less useful. But if I look at just the market trends in the US, it's kind of predicting what's going to happen in a local country a couple of months or years ahead. And it's just great for inspiration, of course.
Yeah, I've generally noticed the bigger the language barrier, the longer it takes for marketing methods to come in from one country to another. So from US to Brazil, Brazil's usually a couple of years behind, 2 to 3 years. I'm guessing US to Germany might be less, like a year behind, just because of the fact that every German speaks English. If they want to learn the latest marketing methods, they don't have to necessarily, translate stuff or learn English from scratch. They can just go and buy an English program or go to an English mastermind, right? So I've noticed that, but I do agree that the US market and, US, Canada, Australia, etc., the English-speaking market, in terms of marketing, that's usually where you see the most advanced tactics. Now, I'm not sure about China. I have no idea how things work there, but at least for the, for the rest of the world, you get like the best marketers coming out from the US, right? And from there, it basically just kind of diffuses out to these other countries. And so if you can make it work in the US market, number one, you get massive rewards, right? Because the scale is just huge, right? Like it's a lot more competition, but if you are willing to be one of the best marketers, one of the best products, you can literally make tens of millions of dollars in the US market, while in a local market, you're gonna hit a cap, especially in something like, the Netherlands. It's a small country. So it does make sense to kind of expand out. It's great to start in a local market to get that confidence, that chops, the marketing skill sets, but eventually it makes sense to really, if you're running an agency especially, to get out into that international market where you can do well. Obviously, this is not the case for everybody. I know people who are doing $100,000 a month in Germany running agencies, and that's amazing, right? Like you can really scale that up, but once you hit that plateau, that's where you can consider going international. And obviously, this is if you speak fluent English, et cetera, like you do, right? If your English sucks, then going into the international market's not going to make sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
The niche that you're most involved in is high-ticket info products and coaching, right?
Yeah.
What are the trends you're seeing in terms of that niche?
Yeah, the first one I already mentioned, right? It's using high-ROAS to make sure your tracking is on point and to make sure you don't kill actual profitable campaigns. Second thing is that webinars, it's harder to make them work nowadays because people want, to be a bit more personal. So what I see is that VSLs that go towards sales call or some discovery call, that's working really well. I think that's also a trend you see, that it's going more towards VSLs. Depending on the market sophistication. It can still work in both, but yeah, VSL is just a little bit easier most time to set up because it's a bit less long, there's less technical components involved. So that's what I'm transitioning towards for my clients. Something else I've been experimenting with is people who are really in it for the long term is to make the funnel a bit deeper. For example, they have an automated webinar and they still do like a monthly live webinar for the people who didn't buy, to really show, hey, I'm really a life coach. I really help people, and then really focus on like answering all their questions and all that stuff. Or even a second automated webinar with a different hook, like a different angle in the title, and also the webinar will be a bit different, because sometimes those people, they register for the webinar but they don't show up because something happened, and maybe they didn't like the subject that much. And if you then show them a different webinar, so for example, if you're talking about day trading, just like first how to learn day trading, but then another angle can be how to become financially free on the stock market, right? Some stuff like that, or how to actually scale your trading account. Some different subjects that I add at the back end. Also, competitors don't see it. I mean, they could go in your email marketing campaign, but then they might not see it, at least, so that's harder to copy because also you have to actually record those webinars. So that's that one. And then asking a phone number for like joining a Facebook group, for joining a webinar, for joining a VSL, either so people can call them up, or to use text messaging like, hey, did you see the new post in the Facebook group, just to improve the engagement, or give some value through texting to even build a stronger connection, because email open rates are also, not what they have been in the past. And just as an extra medium, just like omnipresence, retargeting, an extra medium of communication makes the results way better. So that's, I guess.
I agree with that. What I've been seeing is that live webinars are actually doing well recently, as well as VSL funnels, but adding in text messaging or adding in a setter, somebody to call the leads up. I've definitely noticed that I think in the US market at least, the VSLs are starting to get a little oversaturated, and what's working now is the same VSL funnel but with more personalization, more follow-up, and just basically making sure that the people who come in have more touch points versus expecting them to close and jump on the phone call literally after watching the 20-minute video, right? It feels like right now there's a bit more touch points, a bit more convincing required. And like you said, like doing those live webinars deeper into the funnel, it makes a lot of sense to do that.
Yeah, that's the trend that you see. Like people maybe already bought a course about whatever you're selling, whether it's e-commerce or like learning Spanish. Then they joined the course and then the quality was not good, or there was a live community and there was nobody in that community, or their questions didn't get answered. And now they're trying to figure that out. Is this person really responding to their email? Is the person really responding? Or is the salesperson a proper person who is actually trying to help them instead of sell them? And I guess that's why it's like multi-channel communication is becoming bigger and more touch points are necessary to show that you're actually a person they can trust and that can actually help them.
If you look at any business transaction, usually you do need, I believe the number was 7 or 9 touch points, something like that. And the reality of it is that yes, VSL funnels worked really, really well with just the opt-in, VSL, and a few emails, right? The reality is most people these days do not open their emails as they used to. Email open rates are definitely not that high as in the past. And also most people, they usually need a little bit more trust building because they've already gone through these high ticket funnels. They've already jumped on these sales calls. They know what to expect. So you really have to kind of assuage their fears a bit. And that's where that personal one-on-one where they have somebody they can actually talk to, somebody who gives them a call and there's a real person, and that person isn't a sleazy salesperson, but somebody who's actually there to offer value and ask them, hey, how can I help you? What are your questions? And so on. I think that's what really the key is. And like you mentioned, like a lot of people have experience buying courses and coaching programs, and because of that, they're skeptical of these funnels, right? And that's the toughest thing is you've got to figure out how to overcome that skepticism. And that's something where, being a good marketer is part of that, is dealing with that emotional side where people might have had that bad experience in the past and showing them that, hey, not everybody's like that, not every course is like that. And to be honest, I do blame the gurus because they kind of told everybody, hey, you should sell your course before even making it. And it's like, yeah, that's fine if your course is like lower priced, you can do that, or if your course has really good valuable content. But then there's just like all these Me Too courses that are just coming out.
You can compensate for that by making it more personal at the beginning. So offer them like complimentary coaching calls or whatever, but most people don't do it. And then I've been in those courses, or I saw my clients join them and the course was not finished. And they were asking like, hey, how am I gonna get more traffic, right? They're doing some Instagram strategy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm working on that. Or yeah, I'm testing a new strategy myself. And I feel like that it's a risk, like you are waiting for the traffic. Maybe people quit their job or like a set amount of time to actually invest in that. And if it's not complete, yeah, I feel that I would not be able to sell that myself.
That's the importance also of choosing your niche properly, because at least if it's B2B, your customers are usually competent and you don't need to hold their hand the whole way through. Like, for example, you've been in my program. I haven't had to be like, hey man, this is exactly how you do everything. You just went in there, you jump on the calls, get your questions answered, and you figure it out, right? Like it's like when you're dealing with B2P, you're dealing with very smart people who are generally motivated. Your role is to remove the obstacles in their way, right? So figure out what the major issues they have and provide that personalized support. So instead of them taking like 6 months or a year to do it, they can do it in 2 or 3 months, right? Yeah. That's essentially the way I think about my YouTube ads program, is basically like a lot of smart people join it. Yes, if they hadn't bought the program, they could have figured it out in maybe 6 months, right? But for these smart people, figuring it out in 2 months versus 6 months could mean hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, right? If they can get it 3 times faster, it's just worth a massive amount of money to them because the market moves fast, right? Like in 6 months, things change, so you have to be fast. And that's essentially who I try to sell to. I don't want to sell to people who are kind of like, hey, I have never done online marketing before. I don't know how to do anything. It's just not worth it. I'd rather just work with smart people, right?
Yeah, and just also having a second opinion in any business with any marketing messaging, it's like a super hack. Like, because you are so in your business, that's why I love it. I'm just jumping on these calls. Some people even showing their ads dashboards, looking at the numbers, showing their ads. It's just because sometimes there's something obvious that you don't see because you're so focused on the details, writing down the script or whatever, that you just don't see it. And then somebody says that, and it can be somebody who's in a totally different niche. Maybe he's not, maybe he's even a beginner, but and then your mind's blown. You're like, oh, and you implement it, and it takes off. That second opinion or outsider perspective is priceless, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's definitely really, really important. And so what's been, I guess you kind of answered the question already, but what's been the biggest value you've gotten from our coaching program over the last, I don't know, year or so? I completely forgot when you even joined.
Yeah, so it's what I said, it's like the real-time feedback, like to being able to jump on a call, share your screen, be like, hey, these are the numbers, what would you do, or what's wrong, right? Because sometimes you just get stuck or overwhelmed, and you go in there and you're like, hey, try these things out, and you have a game plan for the next week. Okay, I'm gonna test this, this, and this. And then if it doesn't work, you come back, hey, I tried this, this, and this. What is the next step, right? So that just real-time feedback, that's super important. And also, somebody to just bounce your ideas off and be like, hey, I was thinking about, I remember asking about the quiz funnel. We talked about that. And then it was like, okay, it's a lot of work. What you can also do, what we do is just position your webinar differently. You come up with a new unique mechanism, change like 50% of the content, and launch it again like that. And that might take less time. So just for somebody to tell you that and save you a lot of time is really valuable. So yeah, just the ideas and the real like feedback you actually get. They actually can, in a call, look at your situation, look at the numbers, and that's necessary to help somebody and give feedback. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate that. Well, thanks for coming to Warsaw and jumping on this call. Guys, if you haven't seen the first video interview where we dove a lot more deep into the technical sides, I don't think we have to cover that again because, okay, target CPA, maximize conversions, like there's only a certain number of times you can talk about that, right? I wanted to keep this call focused or this interview focused more on the high level stuff. But yeah, guys, if you want to dive more into the technical side of things, then the original interview we did is really, really great. Go watch that. There'll be a link in the end card up here somewhere. And thanks for watching.